Hi, Patch. Can you tell me if you can hear me? Can you hear me? Please let me know if you can hear me. Okay, you all can hear me, right? Okay, thank you so much. So I'll just go back to sharing the lesson. Okay, perfect. Since you all can hear me, we'll just start. Like I said, we'll start from choose between personal and reflective pronouns. Okay, we will be having the lesson. So yeah. Okay, so our lesson today is reflective and intensive. Yeah, reflexive and intensive pronouns. So this is it over here. Reflexive and intensive. And then we have three lessons, so we'll just start from the first one. Okay, so first of all, the lesson for today, for the first lesson is choose between personal and reflexive pronoun. Choose between personal and reflexive pronoun. Okay, so let's understand the definition first. All right. So now we have reflexive pronouns, and they are pronouns that end in self or selves. Okay. So you guys know the pronouns that usually end in self or selves. They are the reflexive pronoun. Okay. So they are the reflexive pronouns, the ones that always end in self or selves. Okay. So look at it here. We have subject singular, and then we have the reflexive pronoun. These are the examples here. Okay. The I goes with myself. So I as a subject goes with the reflexive pronoun myself. So if you are going to use a reflexive pronoun in place of I, it's going to be myself. Okay. And then you is going to be yourself. That's the reflexive pronoun. Okay. And then she is going to be herself. That is the reflexive pronoun. He, himself for the reflexive pronoun, and it, itself. Okay. So note that the reflexive pronouns are pronouns that end in selves, self or selves. Okay, so these are the reflexive pronouns. Okay, and these are for the singular subjects. But when you have the plural subject like we, you, they, we is going to be ourselves. This is the plural. So for plural subjects that has we is going to be ourselves, and then you, yourselves, they, themselves. Okay. So now a reflexive pronoun is used to refer back to the subject of the sentence or clause in which it appears. It should agree with that subject. So now a reflexive pronoun is used to refer back to the main subject of the sentence or a clause which it appears, and it should agree. So it's just like when we have we cannot have yourself with we goes with ourself. So you cannot have they and then you use ourself as the reflexive pronoun. No, once you're having they, you're going to use themselves. So they must agree, they must go in line with the subject. So these are the subjects, both the singular, the plural. The singular subject must go with its own reflexive pronoun. Just like I will go with myself. You cannot use I and herself. No, 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 no. It's going to be I and myself. So they must agree and they must go in line with each other. Okay? So yeah, that's it. And then we have some examples here. Select the best pronoun to complete the sentence. So you need to select the best pronoun that would help you complete the sentence. Okay? So this weekend, this weekend I am dedicating what? It's going to be, because you have I here as the singular subject, it should be I am dedicating myself, not I am dedicating herself. No, that's why I said that the singular pronouns or the singular subject must go with the reflexive pronouns. Okay, so they must agree with each other. Okay, so it's gonna be this weekend. I am dedicating myself to taking care of the chores that have piled up. I am dedicating myself to taking care of the chores that have piled up. Okay? All right. So we have a reflexive pronoun is used to refer back to the subject of the sentence or clause in which it appears. It should agree with that subject. So they should agree. That's very important. We need to note that they need to agree with each other. So we helped ourselves to some more soup. Okay, so you see that the plural subject here we goes with the reflexive pronoun ourselves. So even from the sentence we have, we helped ourselves to some soup. Okay, so yeah, that's it. We helped ourselves to some soup. The subject of the sentence is we, so use ourselves. Okay, after the guest left, Amy made herself. Amy made herself, okay? Amy made herself a cup of tea. You cannot say Amy made itself. No, it's gonna be herself. Hi, Adora, how are you doing today? So now, so yeah, the subject of the clause in which the pronoun appears is Amy. So Amy can be called she, so use herself, because Amy can be referred to as a girl. Okay, so because Amy can be referred to as a she, right? She's a girl, so she can be addressed as she. You can use herself. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Now, a reflexive pronoun can only be used to refer to the subject of the sentence or clause in which it appears. So note that a reflexive pronoun can only be used to refer to the subject. So when you have a subject, Muhammad, okay, Muhammad is he, right? He's a guy, a boy. So you can use himself for Muhammad, because himself goes with a guy. So you can say Muhammad told himself, because it's he. So it goes with himself. Okay. So that's it for reflexive pronoun. They must be used to refer to the subject. So anything that is the subject, anything that you use as the subject, you must find a perfect reflexive pronoun that goes in line with that. Okay? So to refer to someone else or something else, a personal pronoun like me, you, him, her, it, ours, or them should be used instead. So if you want to refer to a personal pronoun, okay, so you can use these instead of the reflexive pronouns of himself, herself, like that. You use me, you, him, her, it, us, or them should be used instead. Okay, Jake wrote a note for himself. Jake is a guy, so you can say himself, because Jake is a he, so himself goes with Jake as a guy. So the reflexive pronoun him refers back to the subject Jake. Jake wrote a note for him. Now, the personal pronoun him must be referred to someone other than the subject. So if for example somebody else, you can say Michael wrote a song for them. Okay, Micah wrote a song for us. When you use us, okay, these personal pronouns that we have here, when you use the personal pronouns here, we know that you're referring to somebody and it is not about yourself. But if you are referring to yourself, you have to use a reflexive pronoun. For example, um we are okay, so now we are all together on the life lesson having a class. Okay, so we taught ourselves about reflexive pronoun. This is an example because we are referring to ourselves in this lesson now. So it is we taught ourselves because you're talking about yourselves, right? But if you are want to talk about someone else, you can say we taught him. So if you want to talk about someone else, for example, you can say, I taught my brother. So if you want to tell us that you taught your brother something using a personal pronoun, you're going to say, I taught him about reflexive pronoun. Okay, so when you use a personal pronoun, me, you, him, her, it, us, or them, it should be when you're referring to someone else and not the subject. Okay, so yeah, let's look at it and look at the example. So this example here is the weekend. This weekend, I'm dedicating myself to taking care of the chores that have piled up. Okay, and then a job candidate must find some way to distinguish a job candidate must find a way to distinguish herself from the rest of the pack. Okay, so depending on who you are referring to or who you're talking about, if you were a female or male as a job candidate, you can use himself or herself to here. Okay, let's get some more examples before we move on to the test. Do you usually respond with dash by phone, text, or email? Okay, so do you usually respond with yourselves or what? Do you usually respond with dash by phone, text, or email? So it's going to be the subject of the sentence is you. So because it is you, the missing pronoun does not refer to that subject. So now you see that the sentence says that do you usually respond? Now, it's not talking about me, myself, personal person, right? It's talking about what? A different person, right? So the subject of the sentence is you. The missing pronoun does not refer to that subject. The missing pronoun is not referring to that subject. So it should be reflexive pronoun. Instead, use the personal pronoun. So it shouldn't be a reflexive pronoun. This ones will not work in this sentence. Instead, it should be a personal pronoun. So when the sentence come and the sentence is not referring to the subject, if it is referring to the subject, then it is a reflexive pronoun. But if it's not, then you have to use a personal pronoun. So that's it. To protest the logging of old growth forests, demonstrators stationed outside the Capitol building. Okay, so now to demonstrate the logging of old growth forest, okay, to demonstrate the logging, so it's plural, right? So it's gonna be themselves. Okay, the demonstrators can be called they. Mhm. The demonstrators can be called they because they are plural. So you could say like they demonstrated themselves or they stationed themselves outside. So themselves will be the perfect reflexive pronoun. Because if you remove the demonstrators, you can substitute it with word the subject plural they, and then it's going to be themselves. Okay? So they appointed Dash the lead architect of the new sports arena. They appointed. So you have they. So what's it gonna be? They appointed him. Okay. They appointed him what? as word, they appointed him the lead architect of the new sports arena. Okay, so yeah, now it is him because the subject of the sentence is they. The missing pronoun does not refer to the subject, so it's not referring to the subject, because if you read the complete sentence, you look at it, is it referring to the subject? So now you cannot use them. Okay, so it should not be reflexive. Instead, use a personal pronoun him. Okay, so yeah, we'll move on to the test now. Please send in your answers if you know it. Okay, so yeah, so if you know the answers, you can send it in. So we have, this weekend I'm dedicating dash myself. We saw this in the tutorials already. So next off is, I can't wait to acquaint dash with all that his city has to offer. So you read the first and the second option and tell me which one is suitable. Okay. So for number two, is it also myself? Yeah, myself. Okay. I can't wait to acquaint myself with all that this city has to offer. So myself. All right. So in the subway station, a lost stories asks Dash for direction to the flea market. So in the subway station, a lost stories asked what? Is it me or myself? Okay, me. So it's gonna be a personal pronoun, not a reflexive pronoun. All right, wrap around spiders hide during the day by wrapping. Wrap around spiders hide during the day by wrapping dash around twigs. Wrapping themselves or wrapping yourself? What's it gonna be? Wrapping themselves, okay? So themselves. Okay, great. So to observe the poor working condition firsthand, the report guys Dash as one of the factory workers. So disguised what? Disguise himself or herself or myself. Disguise myself or herself. Which one is that? So what's the right answer? Disguised herself. Okay. So yeah. Now he impressed Dash with his knowledge of Greek myths and legends. So what is it gonna be? Is it gonna be he disguised me or myself with his knowledge of Greek myths and legends? So it's gonna be he impressed me or myself. Impressed me or myself. Which one? Me. Okay. Alright, so that's basically it for personal and reflexive pronoun. Can you guys tell me on the chat box, do you understand the first lesson for reflexive and personal pronoun? Do you understand? If you understand, you can say yes. Do you understand? So that we can move on to the next lesson. Only if you understand. So if you understand, send me a yes. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Yes, you understand. Okay, perfect. I'm happy that you guys understand. We'll move on to the next lesson now, since you understand. Now the next lesson, make sure you lesson, okay? Make sure you finish the first one. If you've not completed it yet, you can finish it. The next one is use reflexive pronouns, okay? So you use reflexive pronouns. That's it. So this is basically almost the same thing with what we've done so far. So this is like the singular subjects, okay, for all these. And then this is the reflexive pronoun for the singular subject, reflexive pronoun for the plural subject, okay? So a reflexive pronoun is used to refer back to the subject of the sentence or clause in which, let me make this a little bit smaller, in which it appears it should agree with that subject. So the reflexive pronoun must definitely agree with that subject. Okay, if it doesn't agree, then okay, the sentence is gonna be wrong. All right. So reflexive pronoun can be used to refer to the subject of sentence or clause in which it appears. To refer to someone else or something else, a personal pronoun must be used. So we have the personal pronouns that we can use. So let's see then. This is still you use reflexive pronoun. My grandfather, an immigrant, taught dash English and eventually founded a successful hotel chain. So taught who? Taught himself or he, which one? Okay, so grandfather can be called, right? So it's gonna be taught himself. Okay, it's because grandfather can be referred to as a man. Yes, of course he is. So he can be referred as the he. So you can use himself. Okay, I forced Dash to run one more lap around the track. I forced myself. So the reflexive must go with the subject. Did you know that an oyster feeds dash by extracting algae from the water? Feed what? Itself. Yeah, because you know that it's an animal, so it's gonna be eat, right? So yeah. Okay, so that's it. I think that this one also is a little bit clear. It's like the same thing that we've done so far. So yeah, let's see now. Let's test now. Okay, so when she goes to outdoor events, she generally wraps Dash in scarves and blankets. Wraps herself or himself. So what is it gonna be? This one now from the test. Is it gonna be wrap herself or himself? Herself. Yes, so it is herself. Note that the subject and the reflexive pronoun must agree. If they do not agree, you have to check your sentence. Definitely something wrong with it. So yeah. At the new conference yesterday, he proclaimed Dash the greatest player in the history of basketball. He proclaimed himself or herself. Okay. Proclaimed himself or herself. What's the answer here? Himself. So proclaimed himself, because you see that it's a he. So he goes with himself. He cannot go with herself. Yeah. So girl and boy goes with boy like that. So he, she. Okay, so as I waited in the car, I caught a glimpse of Dash in the review um mirror and realized that I had forgotten to brush my hair. So I caught a glimpse of myself or me. I caught a glimpse of me or myself. Yes, so I got a glimpse of myself. Exactly. Okay. So, as usual, the subject and the reflexive pronoun must agree. So, they must go hand in hand. Okay, yes. Okay, so after an injury, nerve cells repair dash slowly. Researchers at Drexel University are trying to speed up the process. So, nerve cells repair themselves or itself? Is it gonna themselves? Okay, let's see them. Okay, themselves. All right, you must all strap in now. The commander announced it to the International Space Station. So you must all strap yourself or ourselves. Is it you must all strap out yourself or ourselves? You must yourselves, right? Okay. Yeah. Because you see the subject is you and what the reflexive must agree. So that's it, right? So that's about it for reflexive pronoun and the subject. Anything that you're doing, you have to look at your subject. Does the subject agrees with the reflexive pronoun? If it agrees, then you know that your sentence is correct. But if you see that the subject is you and then you are putting ourselves instead of yourself, then that is wrong. It's totally impossible. Okay, so we have, did you know that an oyster feeds itself? Okay, so itself. Yes, so depending on the subject, you must make sure the subject agrees. Like I am saying, the subject needs to agree with what? The reflexive pronoun. Okay? All right, so when you perform this experiment, you must be careful not to burn dash with the acid. Careful not to burn what? Yourself or self. Okay. All right, so let's answer this one as the last question and then we'll move on to the other lesson. Okay. He describes Dash as someone who isn't afraid to try new things. So he describes himself or herself. What is it here? Himself. Okay, that's perfect. I'm glad that you all understand this lesson, right? And thanks for your beautiful answer. I'm very happy that you guys understand. We'll move on now to the last lesson for this test. So it says, is the pronoun reflexive or intensive? So yeah, make sure you complete the upper both, right? The two lessons. Make sure you complete them. Okay, so we are having reflexive and intensive now. So, reflexive pronouns refer back to the subject of the sentence or clause in which they appear. They are always object of a verb or preposition. So, they are always the object of the verb or a preposition. So it says that, did Sarah save any of the cookies for herself? So reflexive pronoun herself refers back to the subject Sarah and it is the object of the preposition for. Look at the for here. Now, intensive pronouns. When you have intensive pronouns, it emphasize or intensify the noun or pronoun they refer to. So it intensifies the noun or pronoun they refer to. They can refer to any noun or pronoun in the sentence, not just a subject. So they can refer to any noun in the sentence. Okay, not just the subject. Intensive pronouns are used for emphasis only. They are not object of verbs or preposition. So when we have intensive pronouns, they are used for emphasis. Okay, they are used for emphasis. So they intensify the noun or pronoun they refer. They can refer to any noun or pronoun in the sentence, not just the subject. Intensive pronouns are used for emphasis only. They are not object of verbs or preposition. No one else was home, so I brought in the groceries myself. The intensive pronoun myself emphasizes the pronoun I. So it intensifies or emphasizes what I did. Okay? After waiting in line all afternoon, we were finally able to meet the queen herself. the queen herself. So intensive pronoun herself emphasizes the noun queen. So note that it emphasizes the pronoun or noun in the sentence. It doesn't matter if it's the subject or not. It's going to emphasize any noun that it needs to intensify in the sentence. So one way to tell if a pronoun is reflexive intensive is to try replacing it with an object pronoun like me, her, or us. So me, her, us. If you can replace it with object pronoun and still have a complete sentence, it is reflexive. Okay? If you can replace it. So one way to tell if it is reflexive or intensive is to try replacing it. So you have to replace it with the object pronoun like me, her, us. And if you get with the object pronoun and you still have a complete sentence, it is reflexive. If you can't, it is intensive. So did Sarah save any of the cookies for herself? Did Sarah save any of the cookies for him? Now you can replace herself with the object pronoun him and still have a sentence. Yeah, so if you switch up the object pronoun, you can still have a sentence with this Sarah save any of the cookie for him. Or even if you say did Sarah save any of the cookie for her, it still makes a sentence. So this tells you that the pronoun is reflexive. No one else was home, so I brought in the grocery myself. No one else was home, so I brought in the grocery for her. Okay? If you myself with the object pronoun her, the second sentence doesn't work. This tells you that the pronoun is intensive. Okay? Now, no one else was home, so I brought the groceries for her. Now, look at this. It doesn't make sense, right? If you're saying that, oh, no one was at home, but you brought the groceries for her. Okay? So the second sentence doesn't work. This tells you that the pronoun is intensive. On the other hand, if you look at reflexive, when you switch it up with object pronoun, it works. But for this one, whenever you switch up something and you see that okay, the sentence doesn't work, then you know that that is it's what intensive. Okay? So we have some example. The West African savanna frog is able to conceal itself in ant colonies thanks to chemicals that cause its skin. So now, is this reflexive or intensive? That's what it's been asked here. So now, the pronoun itself refers to the subject, the West African savanna frog. You can replace itself with an object pronoun, so it is a reflexive pronoun. So let's try to replace it. The savanna frog is able to conceal what? What object pronoun can we replace with itself and you think it's going to work? What object pronoun do you think we can replace here? hmm So what object pronoun do you think we can replace and it's to work? Do you have any idea, everybody? What object pronoun do you think that when we replace with itself, it's going to work? What object pronoun? Do you have any idea? Because if you replace it with an object pronoun, it works. So it is reflexive pronoun. Okay, so let's look at it now then. The West African frog is able to conceal what? Himself, herself, her, him, me, you. What object pronoun? Themselves. Okay. Yeah. So able to conceal themselves. So if you switch it up, it still works with something else. So if it works with another thing, then it is what? It is reflexive. But if it doesn't work with after switching, then it is intensive. Okay, let's look for a sentence that is intensive. Okay, the number of people packed into the auditorium surprised everyone, even the musicians themselves. Okay, so now is this what reflexive or intensive? The number of people packed into the auditorium surprised everyone, even the musicians themselves. So if you remove themselves, so it says here that the pronoun themselves refer to the musicians and it is used for emphasis. You can't replace themselves with an object pronoun, so it is an intensive pronoun. So we can look at this, right? Can we replace themselves with any other thing? Because if we cannot replace it with anything, then it is intensive. But when it's reflexive, reflexive is when you can replace it with another thing and it still makes sense. So now the number of people packed into the auditorium surprised everyone, even the musicians. Now it's musicians. So are you gonna say musicians ourselves? No, musicians himself, it is more than one, so you cannot say him. Musician itself, no. So you see that there's nothing that you can replace with themselves that would make sense. So this makes it intensive. That is it for intensive. Bye, Patch, are you going? Oh, okay, bye. Bye, Adora. Okay, I think it's Adora that's leaving, so bye, take care, Adora. But we still have Patch here, so yeah. Okay, so we have this one now. I was so unimpressed with the original flyer that I designed an entirely new one myself. So if you remove myself, are you gonna say I designed an entirely new one herself? No, because it's referring to I. Is it gonna be anything? No. There's nothing that is gonna work to replace self here because it is intensive. It's saying what? It's emphasizing I. Okay, so I then are we gonna say entirely new one herself? No. Himself? No. Itself? No. It doesn't work. So this is intensive. Okay, so let's move on to the test and try sending your answers if you have an idea. Okay, so okay, we were fortunate enough to meet the governor himself at the town hall meeting. So, is this reflexive or intensive? We were fortunate enough to meet the governor himself at the town hall meeting. So, is it going to be reflexive or intensive? Remember that reflexive is when you switch up with something and it still works. Intensive is when you switch up and it doesn't work. So, Patch says reflexive 2. We have Mohammed says it's 2. So, okay. We were fortunate enough to meet the governor himself. Do you think there's anything that you can switch here that will work? We cannot say the governor him or he. No. So I think that it's intensive because there's nothing that you can switch up here that will still make sense. So intensive is correct. Now there was okay. This was itself. So this is reflexive. This was in the tutorial. So we'll move on to the next. Their business's success was far greater than whatever they themselves had dared to imagine. Okay, so what is this one gonna be? Reflexive or intensive? Their business success, okay, was far greater than whatever they themselves had dared to imagine. So if we say reflexive, what can we switch up with reflexive that will make sense? They, ourselves, no. They, us, no. They, we, no. So this is intensive because even if you use an object pronoun, you cannot figure out something else. Okay? So now you yourself said that education is one of the most important things in life. So are you gonna say you herself, you him, you she, you her? Okay, what do you think? You yourself. Is this gonna make sense? You yourself said that education is one of the most important things in life. If you say reflexive, is there anything that you can put as the reflexive to make sense, or is this also intensive? Most important. So I think that it is intensive. You said that the education is one of the most important things in life. So is it gonna be reflexive or intensive? So what can we switch up here? You, her, no, you, us, no, you, me, no. So this is what intensive, because there's nothing that you can literally switch up, okay, that would give you a complete sentence. So the number of people packed into the auditorium surprised everyone, even the musician themselves. Yes, you cannot change anything, patch. That's it. This one also is intensive because we had it in the tutorial. So yeah. My husband and I promised ourselves that we would always be honest with each other. So is there anything that we can change for ourselves that would still make sense? Reflexive. Is there anything that we can change for ourselves that would still make sense? Is there anything you can use and say, my husband and I promise we, or promise us, or promise themselves? No. So, is there anything that we can use? No, because my husband and I promised ourselves that we would always be honest with each other. So, is there any object pronoun that you can switch up with? Himself, themselves? No. So, this is going to be what? No, we can't, right? So, yeah, it's what? Oh, I want to show you. Okay, as a private detective, you might need to disguise yourself while investigating a case. Okay, as a private detective, you might need to disguise yourself while investigating a case. So, as a private detective, you might need to disguise yourself. Is there anything that you can remove for yourself? You might need to disguise him or her or me or us, we. Okay, what do you think? You might need to disguise themselves or ourselves. What do you think is gonna be? So Patch says intensive. Patch, is it intensive for page 7? We may need to disguise ourselves. You may need to disguise ourselves. You said ourselves. Private detective, you might need to ourselves. So you're asking ourselves. So if you say ourselves, then we should use reflexive, not intensive. Reflexive and not intensive. We may need to disguise ourselves. Okay, so since she says that ourselves, let's go with reflexive, because only reflexive will make us change something. So reflexive was correct, okay? Because of ourself. If you switch yourself with ourself in that sentence, then yeah, it makes sense. Okay, yeah, it makes sense, Patch. It was correct. So yeah, this will be the last one that we will answer together. You always seem to dedicate yourself to such interesting and worthy cause. So is it you always seem to dedicate yourself or herself, himself, her, us, we, ourselves, you, it is you here now. So is there anything that we can switch up with you? Is there anything? You always seem to dedicate what? Ourselves, themselves. What is it? What do you think would be the right and suitable answer here? Two, you said intensive. Okay, let's click on intensive then. Okay, so it says no, it's reflexive. So you have to scroll down. If you ever get any answer wrong, just go down and read okay for yourself to understand why it's wrong. Okay. So the pronoun yourself refers to the subject you. You can replace yourself with an object pronoun. So it says that you can replace yourself. Okay. So this is reflexive. You can replace yourself. So what can we replace yourself with? Object pronoun. So it could be you always seem to dedicate me or dedicate her or ours. Okay, so you always seem to dedicate themselves. You always seek to dedicate themselves or ourselves. Okay, we can use themselves. You said I don't know. You can use themselves also. You can use themselves and maybe ourselves, and then object pronoun. You always seem to her dedicate her. So you could use her. Okay, you can use her, seem to dedicate her to such interesting and wedding cause. So yeah, you can use object pronoun here. So these are some examples of our object pronoun to take note also. Okay, so send it on the chat box. Do you understand? Do you have any questions? Please let me know. If you have no questions, click on no, or you say no on the chat box. Do you have any questions that you want to ask? Any questions? Any questions? Let me know if you have any questions or you have no questions. Before we end, any questions? Patch, do you have a question? No. Muhammad, are you still here? Do you have any questions? If you have no questions, everyone, please send it to the chat. No. Okay, so I guess that we are going to meet next time. Do have a great weekend, everyone. Try to complete the test if you haven't done that, okay? And we will meet next time. Have a good weekend and bye, everyone. Bye, everyone.